A bombshell announcement in Israel as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is formally charged with bribery, fraud and breach of trust, thrusting the country into even greater turmoil as Israel looks set to be heading to a third round of elections. Explosive new testimony comes out of the Trump impeachment proceedings. We'll bring you up to speed on the latest out of Capitol Hill. And the Anti-Defamation League holds a conference amid a frightening rise in anti-Semitism. Our correspondent was on the ground. Hello, I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for joining me. The bombshell announcement late Thursday to indict Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to send shockwaves through Israel and beyond, with Netanyahu now formally charged with fraud, bribery and breach of trust in all three cases, known as Case 1000, 2000 and 4000. It's the first time in Israel's history that a sitting Prime Minister faces criminal charges, casting a heavy shadow over Netanyahu as he battles to remain in power. He now has just 30 days to decide whether to ask for parliamentary immunity and could also immediately be required to give up the 4 ministerial posts that he holds. Let's listen to the dramatic announcement by the Attorney General and then Netanyahu's response.
Law enforcement is not a discretionary matter. It's not a question of left or right. It's not a question of politics. It is an obligation that is imposed on us. Now we are witnessing an attempt at a coup against the Prime Minister with false claims and tendentious, contaminated investigations.
Now, in the wake of the bombshell announcement, opposition lawmakers are calling on Netanyahu to resign, with the leader of the Blue and White Party, Benny Gantz, reposting a video that Netanyahu had made 11 years ago when then Prime Minister Ehud Olmert was facing corruption allegations, in which Netanyahu himself urged Olmert to resign. The Blue and White Party also blasting Netanyahu for claiming justice officials were trying to oust him from power illegally. And on the political front, amid an unprecedented deadlock in coalition talks, State Prosecutor Shai Nitzan reportedly is arguing that Netanyahu cannot legally be tasked with forming a government while under indictment. And joining me here in the studio is Professor Emmanuel Gross, who's a Professor of Emeritus in the Faculty of Law at Haifa University. Professor, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So it really is the first time in Israel's history that a sitting Prime Minister has been charged with such crimes. Walk us through what happens next.
Well, the next step depends what Mr. Netanyahu will decide. According to our Act of Parliament, he has a right to apply to the Knesset and ask for a parliamentary immunity. The problem is that we are in a transitional period, which means that we don't have in the Knesset, the Knesset actually is not functioning. We don't have within the Knesset the committee that should listen and debate about this application. Therefore, without this committee, the Knesset committee, we cannot move, which means that we have to wait until a new government will be created and a new Knesset, which will take us, you know, many months to go further. And then we have another problem, whether a prime minister can be actually appointed, or a candidate for a prime minister can be appointed to this task after being charged with such a serious crimes. Those are questions that never before
come up.
Yeah, so it's new, and many other questions as well will have to be solved. So we have to wait and see.
Certainly uncharted waters that we're trying to navigate here. Professor, yesterday he attacked the judicial system, saying it's a coup against him and that the charges are fabricated. Let's take a listen to one of the things that Netanyahu kept saying was investigate the investigators.
I won't allow our country, our democracy, to have such contaminated investigations, with such arbitrary investigations, with such distortions of justice. I will not allow lies to prevail. I will continue to lead this country for the sake of our country, for the sake of our democracy, for the sake of the rule of law, for the sake of justice. We must do one thing. We must finally investigate the investigators. Thank you.
Okay, Professor, we've just heard there from Netanyahu. Tell me, what do you make of this, and how does this sort of reflect on Israel's democracy?
Well, let's separate those two questions. How it reflects on the Israel democracy. I will start with the last question. I mean, on the one hand, I'm very sorry, everyone actually. We are sorry that our Prime Minister is charged with that kind of serious crimes. On the other hand, I think it's a privilege for a democracy to be able to investigate and to bring to press charges against a prime minister. Not many democracies in the world would be able, to do it. So I'm proud. About the allegation of our prime minister against the Attorney General, I'm really sorry that he took that road, because I think that if he would be an honest person and respect the rule of law, and respect those guys who are enforcing the rule of law, he would have, to restrain himself and to not accusing the Attorney General with a coup, which is an absurd. Knowing personally the Attorney General for many years, I think this is the last person you can actually suspect with a political agenda or something like that. I'm very sorry he decided to take this path. It's not honoring him, and as I said, I'm very sorry. Anyhow, it's baseless. There is no ground for such an allegation, and with the time, everyone will actually have to understand it's a baseless accusation.
And we have about a minute or so left, Professor. Tell me, with Israel's political sphere and the chaos it is in at the moment, what do you make of the timing of all of this?
Well, it's a very, very tough, difficult time for Israel. Not only we have, to cope with so many security problems and economic problems. On top of it, now we have a prime minister under charges. I don't really know how he will be able, to execute his task while he's standing on trial, which I think it's unprecedented. We shall have to wait and see.
And just very, very briefly, do you believe that he will be granted immunity?
Well, I'm not sure, but if the Knesset will decide to do it, I'm pretty sure someone will petition to the High Court of Justice, and the High Court of Justice will overrule this decision.
Professor Emmanuel Gross, it was a real pleasure having you in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we are going out for a short break, but when we come back, we'll bring you the very latest on the impeachment proceedings against US President Donald Trump as more allegations come to light. All of that, plenty more when we come back. Stay with us.
I-24 News, the international channel in the heart of the Middle East, now brings you a new view of this troubled region. From I-24 News' acclaimed Arabic language channel, the stories, the people, the passions of the Middle East that you haven't seen before. A weekly roundup of highlights from I-24 News Arabic. Every Sunday, only on I-24 News.
Time to wake up with Cheddar. Good morning. Tell me everything.
Come on now. Where do we begin?
The turn of events for this company is absolutely incredible.
Incredible.
Impeachment seems to be the word on everyone's lips.
You guys, I really just want to hurry up because there's an actor I want to go say hi to.
I'll let that go for today.
The Holy Land. It has awed and inspired and consoled the faithful for centuries. Holiness is here, in the land, in the light, in the ruins, and houses of worship. Let us take you there each week as we uncover the rich and fascinating history of man's search for spirituality in this ancient land. Join me each week for the Holy Land Uncovered.
Welcome back. Let's go now to Washington after another day of impeachment testimony on Capitol Hill. Fiona Hill, a former White House Russia expert, testifying to a fictional narrative in regard to 2016 election interference, calling it dangerous story planted by Russia that plays into Moscow's hands. Now, she was joined by David Holmes, a senior Ukraine embassy official, who detailed a conversation that he overheard between President Trump and the US ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, about investigations. Rachel Scott with more.
Adjourned.
A marathon of impeachment hearings capped off on Thursday with a message from Fiona Hill.
I refuse to be part of an effort to legitimize an alternate narrative that the Ukrainian government is a U.S. adversary and that Ukraine, not Russia, attacked us in 2016.
That statement from Hill, a Russia expert, served as a direct contrast to what the top Republican on the Intelligence Committee said just one day earlier.
The thing that the Democrats have been unwilling to accept is that their operatives got campaign dirt from Ukrainians in the 2016 election.
Hill, a former senior White House official, also painted Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal lawyer, as a central figure in an alleged pressure campaign against Ukraine, pressure the president has denied.
Is it your understanding then that President Trump disregarded the advice of his senior officials about this theory and instead listened to Rudy Giuliani's views?
That appears to be the case, yes.
And the other witness in Thursday's hearing, diplomat David Holmes, told lawmakers about a call that Ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, took while at a restaurant in Kyiv. On the other end of the line, President Trump.
It was quite loud when the president came on, quite distinctive.
Holmes describing what he said he overheard.
Ambassador Sondland replied, yes, he was in Ukraine, and went on to state that President Zelensky, quote, loves your ass. I then heard President Trump ask, so he's going to do the investigation. Ambassador Sondland replied that he's going to do it, adding that President Zelensky will do anything you ask him to do.
The list of women who say they were abused by deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein just keeps on growing, with another person coming forward to file a lawsuit in the federal court saying that she suffers from lasting damage from sexual abuse. Tila Davies says that she was raped at Epstein's homes that he owned in New York, Paris, Florida, New Mexico and the US Virgin Islands, releasing a statement saying, I still have flashbacks, it still hurts. Now, Epstein was found hanging in his New York jail cell back in August as he was being held on charges of being part of a sex trafficking ring. Moving now to Iran, and US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is calling on Iranians to send videos which show police brutality carried out by the regime as internet in the Islamic Republic is being restored after a government-imposed shutdown. Pompeo tweeting that the US will expose and sanction the abuses following mass protests over an increase in fuel prices, with Amnesty International reporting that at least 106 people have been killed during the violence. Now, hate crimes against Jews on the streets of New York have reached frightening levels, while anti-Semitism in the UK and far-right white nationalism across Europe have reached the top levels of government. Now, that makes today's annual Anti-Defamation League conference ground zero in the latest round of containment against the forces hell-bent on driving out Jews and oftentimes other minorities. Mike Wagenheim filed this report.
Thinkers and doers, politicians and preachers here gathering in New York City on Thursday at the annual Anti-Defamation League conference, talking about how to combat rising anti-Semitism, not only on the shores of Europe, but right here in America with recent stabbings and beatings of Jews here in New York City. We spoke with the head of the ADL, trying to figure out how to gather all of these thinkers, policies, platforms that are being discussed here today and mold them into some type of coherent plan to combat anti-Semitism.
I'm proud of the fact that we have a partnership with the USC Shoah Foundation to bring the lessons of the Holocaust to the next generation. I'm proud we're working with the Aspen Institute to train the next generation of leaders and to mitigate anti-Semitism or bigotry before it even happens. I'm proud of the work we're doing with the Western States Center to fight right-wing extremism. I'm proud of the work we do with Hillel to fight left-wing anti-Semitism on campuses. So the way that we will win this battle is not by doing it ourselves. The way that we win is by partnering with other best-of-class groups and using innovation.
Of course, anti-Semitism coming from all points on the political spectrum, not only among far-right white nationalists, but progressive Jews finding they're having trouble as well, finding their place within progressive circles. How to fix that problem?
We're here. We're standing up for criminal justice. We're here. We're marching, on the steps of the Supreme Court, supporting Dreamers and supporting TPS recipients. And we're doing it as Jews and as Zionists, and we're pushing back on the perspective that we're not a part of these fights, that we don't care. The way to fight anti-Semitism, we have to fight all of these hatreds. We have to fight them in an inclusive way that builds new partners and builds a more just country and a more just society. We can't fight anti-Semitism in a silo alone.
Of course, anti-Israel sentiment and anti-Semitism often tangled into one. Many blame the policies of current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for inflaming anti-Semitism across the world. He's under indictment now, and perhaps a more progressive candidate of sorts in Benny Gantz could take over, theoretically, as prime minister down the road. But would that actually fix the problem of people using anti-Israel sentiment as a front for their own anti-Semitism?
To the extent that Netanyahu has, personally, through things that he obviously felt were the right calls policy-wise for Israel, harmed Israel's image abroad. If he leaves, then those people will give a fresh look to whoever the next person is. That being said, there are very fundamental debates and policy disputes over Israel that aren't going to go away just because you change who's in charge.
Of all the ways to combat anti-Semitism, comedy, one of them. Comedian Sacha Baron Cohen of Borat and the Israeli Spy fame to receive an award here today for using his comedy to combat anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic thought around the globe. Reporting from the ADL annual conference in New York City, Mike Wagenheim, I-24 News.
German media is reporting that Chancellor Angela Merkel is planning to visit the former Nazi death camp Auschwitz for the first time in 14 years since she's been serving in office. Now, it's widely believed it'll happen on December 6th, and while her office is confirming she will go, it hasn't said yet on which date. The Nazi regime killed more than 1 million Jews at that camp during World War II. New Israeli play Borders is playing at a theatre in Tel Aviv based on a very real yet brief encounter the creator and director Nimrod Kazishman had with a Lebanese man he connected with over the dating app Grindr. Sarah Williamson and Emmanuel Honorat have more.
If an act could break down walls, then this would be it. Borders, an Israeli play, flirts with the idea of forbidden love between Boaz and George. Two men from neighboring but also quarreling countries, Israel and Lebanon. The characters connect on the gay dating app Grindr, and before they know it, are enticed into a romance, both exciting and impossible. In a city like Tel Aviv, approaching social and political issues is easy. But as the play's director, Nimrod Danishman, says, for other areas of Israel, just seeing gay characters on stage is a novelty.
We never saw gays on stage, like gay characters. We never had this kind of a theater here. They talk about how much it's important there. So yeah, we were a bit afraid of the reaction, but then it was like, okay, give us more.
The positive reviews, however, do not make up for the harsh reality of a Middle East plagued by unresolvable issues. If anything, the play crystallizes matters that have for a while now been a neglected norm in Israeli daily life.
It's like stuck in the throat. It's like really bad taste. Yeah, it's like you can't just disconnect from this play immediately afterwards and go to your daily life. And I guess it's an achievement. The situation here can't be ignored anymore.
The story of star-crossed lovers is a universal one. Amit Weinberg, the actor playing Israeli Boaz, explains why he thinks the play is touching people as much as it is.
Because it's simple, because it's not going to the obvious thing that you can say. It's really dealing with people.
As Danishman says, the play may not have a direct message, but it does raise many questions, not only on a political level, but also on a personal level. Borders knows how to tug at the heartstrings, teasing the audience with an impossible reality, at least for now.
Now, people visit Israel for a lot of different reasons, but one convention is bringing travel agents from all over the world for an adrenaline-packed trip throughout the country that's all about showing a different side to Israel. Erica Jackson travelled with that group in the desert and has more on the action-packed experience.
Israel, usually a religious, historical, and cultural destination. But as the sun hangs over the majestic desert, many exploring the landscape are getting a taste of something else. For the first time, the inaugural Israel Land of Adventure convention brought together 27 travel agents and tour operators from North America, Australia, and Europe, giving them an action-packed experience. It's all part of the Israel Tourism Ministry's new marketing niche for the country, Israel as an adventure, nature, and extreme destination. The experience included the group hitting the road.
Right now, we're in the middle of the desert. We're on a Jeep tour, and this is one of the activities that's taking place today to give people an experience of the adventure that Israel has to offer. And we're driving through Ramon Crater, the largest maktesh in the world, which is a unique geological formation that's caused by erosion.
It's been quite fun so far because the roads are a little bit bumpy and quite windy.
Shipping is really interesting. It's a great way to see a little bit more of the desert than you can see on foot, and it's also, let's be honest, it's more comfortable than having to trek all the time in the sun.
The adventure continuing not just on the ground, but in the air, with some experiencing Israel's adventure through rappelling down a cliff.
This is the first time I've done rappelling, and the view was particularly stunning because I was in front of the desert.
Yeah, it was great. Little surprise when you have the bit of the overhang, but yeah, lots of fun.
But that wasn't all. The adventure continued with a bike ride in Mitzpe Ramon in Israel's Negev desert.
When we go along the cliff and to see the view, it was so fantastic and so spectacular. This is a perfect place for the European people really to come and to enjoy the sunshine and relax and do adventuring.
The convention comes amid a tourism boom in Israel, with an additional 1 million tourists visiting the country in the last 2 years. But the country, which is striving to gain a reputation as an adventure destination, also faces a threat: rocket fire from Gaza.
I think it can be challenging because that's what we hear on the news. I really want to go back and tell people about this experience and encourage them to come and see for themselves.
Israel rolling ahead as an adventure destination. Reporting from Mitzpe Ramon, Erica Jackson, I-24 News.
And that is all we have time for this edition of I-24 News, but we are continuing to bring you all of the breaking stories, so do go ahead, visit us online, i24news.tv, and we have all of those stories on all of our social media channels. I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for watching.